those who are willing to live out his heart, recognize his heart, and follow it. Isaiah 58, I'm reading from the NIV church Bibles that we've got. Shout it aloud. Do not hold back. Raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellion, and to the descendants of Jacob their sins. For day after day they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for God to come near them. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves and you've not noticed? Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please, or you go about your own business and exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarrelling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this the kind of fast that I've chosen? Only a day for people to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the kind of fasting I've chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke. Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you'll call, and the Lord will answer. You'll cry for help, and he will say, here I am. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and doing as you please, going about your own business. On my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honourable, and if you honour it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you'll find your joy in the Lord. And I will cause you to ride in triumph on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Amen. As I walked up this morning, came up Grafton Road, and coming up towards the end of Grafton Road, I could hear something. I thought, is that an alarm going off? Is that my phone ringing? And then eventually it came into focus, and there was an ambulance going across the top of the road down Sandwell Road. That's what I'd heard. It drew my attention. And as I got to the top of the road and crossed over, another vehicle came along, blaring its sirens, and it was a major incident unit, a vehicle, support vehicle. It looked just like an ambulance. It was that big, but it was going down the same way. So I don't know if anybody else saw anything as you came to church today, but something was going on down there. When something like that happens, you listen, don't you? You look, what's going on? And if you've ever been stuck in front of a fire engine, when it's blaring those noises that are so loud, you just want to put your fingers in your ears because you're thinking, that is too loud. But if you're in a car, you know it's coming too, and that's the main point, people in cars. When God spoke to Isaiah, it was as if he was saying, I need you to get out there and bring my people face to face with their sins. And I want you to make it loud. I want you to do it as if your voice was a trumpet call. And the trumpet call could be several things, couldn't it, in those days? Like an air raid siren from people. There's danger coming. Everybody needs to hear. Everybody needs to hear. The enemy's coming towards the city. Move, people, move. And he would have moved very quickly to find out what was wrong and whether you needed to escape. Or else at other times to call people together to celebrate or to hear important things. But it was something like, I don't know what you've got that makes you jump up. Whenever the telly's on in our house and the hospital programs are on, the emergency one, where the telephone rings, the red phone rings, yeah? It always makes me jump. I hate it. I hate that phone. I couldn't work in that place. Because every time it rings, it goes, I'm like, what's that? What's that? Some people are probably used to it. But that's what God was saying. Listen, you need something. You need to go and make a noise. That's not loud, is it? You need to make a loud noise. I don't know what to do to make a loud noise. I'm not a loud person. If Philip was here, he could make a loud noise with his voice like a trumpet. Because he's got the gift. He's got the gift. He can act. He can speak loud without a microphone. What he's saying to Isaiah is, look, I need you to make it so clear. I need you to sound this like a trumpet to people so they know, look guys, this is serious. You are in danger. You need to sort something out. What's happening at the moment is not right. That's what he was saying. Listen up. I want you to make it black and white, chalk and cheese. Shock them into seeing that the way they're living isn't right and what they're doing is wrong. The Message translation has got a good way of putting it. Paraphrases things, doesn't it? Shout! A full-throated shout! Hold nothing back! A trumpet blast shout! Tell my people what's wrong with their lives. Face my family, Jacob, with their sins. See, God cares. He cares. It's not just judging because he's a judgmental, angry, grumpy God sat in the sky who wants to make life difficult for you. He's trying to help us to change, to get out of the trap that the world puts us in. Out of the trap that we wander into deliberately. He's trying to break through the times when he really needs to shout at us to make us listen, like that alarm going off. So this is an alarm. The interesting thing is that when we get to the second verse, I missed out my picture. Didn't get that picture. Never mind. When you get to the second verse, you begin to hear a picture that's a bit like a very, very normal church congregation. Is this really what God's complaining about? Why? They worship, they seek me daily. How many of us come here daily and worship the Lord and seek him here? Well, maybe we do sit down and seek him daily. They study, and it says that, and they delight to know my ways. They have prayer and intercession, seeking God's will. They ask of me righteous judgments. They're fasting. They're really keen, good fasters. They really know what to do. So they're not just saying, well, yeah, we're going to miss a meal today, and we're going to pray to God a little bit. They covered themselves in dust and ashes, lying down on a bed and pretending that they're mourning for somebody. The whole world's ended. Putting on a real show of a fast. And yet they complain that God doesn't seem to want to answer them. We made all this effort. Look at us. We're a wonderful church. We're a wonderful people of God. We're praying, we're seeking, we're worshipping, we're studying, we're in the Word, and we're fasting, and we're doing things like, we're just, but you just don't listen to us, God. You're just not speaking. Why do you not listen to us when we do all the things that you've told us to do? So then he faces them with that all the things that they are doing wrong and the things that they're not doing, doesn't he? So I want you to stop for a moment, and I'd like you to do something. I'd like PowerPoint to do something, really. Here we go. Why do you think they couldn't see and didn't respond to the injustice and the need within their community? What do you think? What might have led them to that place where, they had everything on the outward appearance that looked really good, really, really good. We say, well, that's a good church, isn't it? But why do you think? And I want you to turn around to somebody, maybe one or two people, and I want you to make just a couple of suggestions. Why do you think they couldn't see it and didn't respond to the injustice and need within their community? What was going on? What led them to that place? What could have led them to be like that? Maybe that just get you thinking about what's happening here. It may just, as we were saying, it may just have been sheer selfishness that we can't be bothered. We're all right, thanks. We just can't be bothered to do anything for anyone else. Or so absorbed and so busy in what they were doing for what they thought was for God, in their religious observance, that they didn't have time. Life is so busy for us today, isn't it? Often for many people, with family, work, everything that's going on, we don't have time to look and see what's going on around us, even within our own families sometimes. Yeah, it's all good. All the things they were doing were good, but they're all actually pointless if our lives support and demonstrate the wrong values, or if we don't do what is in God's heart. It's all just a kind of face value surface thing, isn't it? A veneer, like your kitchen worktop. Well, you've probably got solid marble kitchen worktop. So in mine, if I were to dent it, underneath the lovely surface, there's chipboard. And once the water gets in and it expands, it's like, it's gone. That's what sometimes our religious observance can be like. It's a veneer that looks good. It looks good, it's great, it's a nice pattern. But underneath, what's happening? Where's the life? Where's the life? When times are good or even just okay, we can get obsessed with petty issues within families, let alone within church, can't we? We focus on things that really, really do not matter on the grand scale. They do not matter. But we are so absorbed in what we're doing that we make them bigger than it should be, and that's when we can fight and when we can cause trouble in our families or in church. Because we're not realizing that all around us are thousands of people who are living a hell without God and headed for an eternity in hell also without God. It starts now. If we think about Jesus, he sought after the poor, the addicts, the oppressed, the needy, the mourning, the sick, the sinner. It's very hard to think that I can be a true believer in Jesus if I ignore all the needs around me and the people that he has a heart for, isn't it? How can I be like that? Even in the old covenant times of Isaiah, God's heart was to set the oppressed free. God loves redressing the balance because he has compassion and he wants to put right the imbalance that human sin and injustice has caused. And it might be our own sin, foolishness, that causes that imbalance, or it can be the sins of others, or it can be the endemic problems in our organisations, in our society, can't it? The endemic sin and evil that goes on around us that makes people captive to negative systems that destroy them. So God's saying to his chosen people, you come to church, you look and sound respectable, you sing lovely songs and pray lovely prayers, you say you want to know my will, read my word, but then you complain that I don't answer your prayers. And it's like what James says in James 4 verse 3, when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You do not receive for a reason. And again, the message gives a good paraphrase. I'm not going to use the message after this, I promise. But the message says this instead of the verses we've got there. They're busy, busy, busy at worship and love studying all about me. To all appearances, they're a nation of right living people, law-abiding, God-honouring. They ask me, what's the right thing to do? And love having me on their side. But they also complain. Why do we fast and you don't look our way? Why do we humble ourselves and you don't even notice, God, what we're doing? So then what he does is to move on and to explain to them clearly. This is the trumpet call. This is what he's saying. These are the things that you're doing wrong, and then these are the things that you need to do. So there's a negative and there's a positive. The negative things, well, very, very simple. In the next few verses, unveiling their sin, he says these things. You're just going about your own business. You're doing your own thing. You're even on the days that you've set aside for me, As it says at the end, doesn't it? You don't keep the Sabbath. What you do is just go and do your own business. You might show your face at the door of the synagogue or the temple, as it were, in those days, where you might come to church. But then you're going about doing anything you want on the day that you say you're setting apart for God. That's hypocritical, isn't it? That's just a veneer on the surface. Going about your own business. You're doing your own thing. In fact, I think for them, it was their businesses that they were going about. They were doing their own thing. They were making money. They were taking advantage of those who worked for them. So they were cutting corners. They were not paying them the money they should pay them. They were treating them as just a way to get more money, a way to get what they wanted to. Treating people, taking advantage of people. They were at odds with each other. They were quarrelling and fighting with each other even on the Sabbath. And they were paying religious lip service to God and to his ways, to be seen as respectable, but actually not being at all. Those are dangers, aren't they? Those are real dangers for us too, that we can be seen to be looking righteous at church, but then we treat each other and we treat other people badly when we're not here. We go about our business and put it as a higher priority than serving God, loving God, knowing him. Now, I wonder where my other slide's gone. Never mind. Just get myself back here. Right, I seem to have several slides that I don't need here, so please excuse me when I get to the right one. So then he talks about how they can actually respond and live according to his heart. This is what you can do positively. How to resonate with God's heart. What does he want us to do? And the first thing is this. Yeah, that's the second thing. Strike a blow at the causes of oppression. So in verse 6, you've got several things. It talks about loosing the bonds of wickedness, the sharp practices that keep people on low wages and unable to get out of that bond, or the aggression and the abuse that keeps people down because they're in fear. To undo the straps of the yoke, perhaps debt. Perhaps people who sold themselves into slavery because they couldn't afford to pay off their debts. And they would say, well, I'll give you 20 years of my life if that will clear my debt. It's as if you're not paying me, but I'm getting my wages of freedom at the end of that time. And God is saying, undo the straps of the yoke. Let the oppressed go. Free people. To break every yoke, to loose the chains that bind people. That's the first thing. So that's almost like the causes, isn't it, of things that we find people are trapped by. So when we think about the CAP Money course, one of the things that's trying to do is to smash the cause of people's captivity to debt by helping them to break out of that cycle and be able to manage for themselves. It's not like you just give them money and then you give them money next week and give them more money, because that won't break the cause. So when we are aiming to do something like the CAP Money course, what we're doing is obeying this. We're looking at God's heart to strike a blow at the causes of aggression, the causes of poverty, the causes of inequality, the causes of injustice, speaking out about them, making a change. I can't tell you, there's so many things you could do in order to do that. So it's not just meeting the immediate need, but it's trying to help people to get out of that situation. It might be careers advice that they need. It might be a helping hand. It might be someone to stand alongside them and help them through a difficult relationship. It might be all sorts of things. But strike at those things. That's God's heart. He doesn't want people to be enslaved. He doesn't want them to be prisoners all their life of corrupt systems. But he does also want us to satisfy the immediate needs of people around us. Because unless you do that, they won't have the strength to face the bigger needs. So, verse 7, share your bread with the hungry, bring the homeless poor into your house, when you see the naked, to cover him, to clothe him. Verse 10, pour yourself out for the hungry, satisfy the desire of the afflicted. It's really hard, isn't it? Because when somebody is on the street and they're begging for food and for money, it's a very difficult call to know what to do for them. But what we're called to do is do both things. And try and help them to find out what it is that's caused them to be there. Link them up with people who can help them, if it's possible to do that. Talk to them about what's going on in their lives. Love them with God's love. Show them His way. But also to feed them. If somebody comes to me and says, I've got nothing to eat for the next 48 hours because I had to give my money to this person who has mistreated me, what will I say? It's hard. I might say, well, you should never give your money to that person. Go away again. You'll just have to starve for the next 48 hours. Well, probably not. I want to do something about the problem, about the cause of the problem. And that's what's God's in God's heart, isn't it? But then we need to do something about the immediate needs of people as well. And that's what He's asking them to do. And that is really tough when you see what He's asking them to do. Pour yourself out for the hungry. When you see the naked, give them your clothes. Somebody's cold on the street, give them your clothes. They're homeless. Bring the homeless poor into your house. Difficult, that, isn't it? But that's the challenge God is giving. That's the challenge God is giving. Find somewhere for them to live. But then He also says, prioritize your own family. He says, stop turning away from your own flesh and blood when they actually need you. Have you forgotten about them? The people in your family that need your help in some way or another. Maybe practically, maybe emotionally, maybe spiritually. He says, start loving and believing in one another. Start behaving rightly towards one another. Take away the yoke from your midst. Verse 9. Actually, you're mistreating one another as well. Take away the pointing of the finger and the speaking wickedness to one another. The Message, oh no, I'm not going to quote the Message anymore. Forget that. You can read the Message, what it says about that verse. It's quite good, I tell you that. But it's all about loving people within your own family, loving and believing in one another, isn't it? That's really hard. And that's God's heart. Start with where you are, with your family, with your friends, with the people in your church, with the people in your fellowship group. And make sure you're right with them. Love them. Don't point the finger at anybody. Don't speak wickedly about them. It's easy to get complacent when we have enough to eat, we have somewhere to live, we have the benefit of a community around us, maybe in church, to care for us and to be cared for and to care for them. There comes a point when we need to see what's happening out there in our community, and we need to know, and we need to expose ourselves to the situations people are in. And this is hard because often we don't know where to start. Or we are very busy and we don't have the time to do it, but it is worth doing it. It's worth trying a walk even just around the streets. Can I ask you to try that? Take someone with you if it's a bad time of night or whatever. But have a walk around the streets and open your eyes wide to what's going on around you. There are prostitutes gathering on the Soho Road, not just at night, in the morning and during the daytime at the moment. And it's become a centre in the UK that's been talked about. People come from all over, apparently. There are people trying to do stuff about it. Even on residential roads, you will see them waiting around. But why are they there? I've been walking down the street, and it wasn't until I was educated about this and told what to look for. You see people standing at the corner of the road, and you might just think they look a little bit malnourished or they look a bit odd, but you think, I'm not going to make a judgment about them. No. You just walk on and you don't look at people, obviously. But you look at people and you will see the prostitutes on the corners. You will see them in other places too. But ask yourself, why are they there? Take a look at their health. Take a look at the state of their bodies. Take a look at the state of their eyes and their faces. And pray. Because most of them are in deep, deep trouble. Deep trouble. They are yoked to a pimp. They are oppressed by a drug supplier. They are bound to a lifestyle because of debt or their personal history. And they can't escape it. They can't change it. Certainly not very easily. They're on your street and my street, which is why I had all these wonderful pictures of our streets. That's where they are. They're in our community, but if you're driving in your car or you're walking somewhere and you just want to get there, you don't see what's under your nose. I know this is taking a while, but let me just explain one or two things to you. Let me give you an example. Came home from prayer meeting one Friday. Forgive me if I've said this before. I don't know when it was, probably earlier in the year. And it was a Friday, so the bins were out, and there was a girl behind our bin in the entryway, trying to hide, not really being able to hide. And so my first thought was, well, what do I say? What are you doing there? Go away. I need to put my bin in. So I did sort of try. I sort of said, are you okay? Hello, I just need to put the bins in. No, go away now. Don't know what you're doing there. Well, I noticed that she was crying. I noticed that she had a big red mark down the side of her face. She was like anyone you see in this church. She's like one of our young people. Young black girl who looked, she looked young, ready to face the world, but actually she was completely crumpled. And I didn't know what to do. I was on my own. What should I do? I got her a bag of peas from the freezer, and she was able to do something with her head, and got her a cup of tea, had a talk. She'd just been beaten up by somebody who she'd gone to the instruction of her pimp, a drug dealer who was supplying her to keep her addiction going. She was like one of our children. She was just like one of your daughters. And she said, I wish I had a parent, a father like you. I wish I had somebody. I can't go to my mum. She doesn't understand. I've called the police, and it's time for me to make a new start. And I want to get out of this somehow. I called them, they're not coming. I told them where I was. And I said, well, let's hang on and see if they come. Let's just wait and see, because then you'll get a new start. I talked about the fact that I was a pastor and that God loved her, and I prayed for her. But then she began to get her next craving for her next fix. She couldn't sit still. She couldn't sit still, she had to go. And I've never seen her again. So heaven knows what's happened to her. And it's sad, isn't it? And that's happening all over our streets. It's happening everywhere. It's happening as you walk down the Soho Road. It's happening in your street. But we don't see it because we don't open our eyes and we don't know. There were guys in the car parks off Soho Road trying to sell part-used parking tickets to get some cash. That's perhaps more funny, but it's also a typical indicator of how bad things are at the moment, because I have never seen that in my life. I go to a car park in Harborne, people give me their ticket. They say, would you like this? I've got an extra hour on it. And I say, oh, thank you very much. And then wave them goodbye and then go and pay my money because it's not transferable and it's breaking the law to do that. But that's an indication. We've seen so many people lying on the streets, haven't we, begging. In Handsworth now, we never used to see very many people in Handsworth. A couple of years ago we were saying, oh no, you've got to go to the city centre, that's where you'll find them. But they were all over the place. They were all over the place. Behind closed doors, people are starving to feed their children in Handsworth. They are. It's true. Not just making that up. You go and talk to a food bank. You go and talk to the people who work in food banks. It's right, isn't it, Esker? It's right. That's partly because of the shackles of debt, but partly the uncaring, unjust oppression of the state system, which is saying things like, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't give you any money now, you're going on universal credit. It's a system, people are doing it, can't help it, it's a system that does it and pushes it down. So you'll have no money for the next 4 weeks, or 6 weeks. Sorry, we don't do any crisis loans and things very much anymore, we help it. So you'll just have to starve. Seriously, there are people starving, and I come across people starving because things like this have happened. They're trapped. How would you try living 4 weeks on nothing? Maybe you have, maybe you know what it's like. Maybe you could because you've got a little bit of money in your bank account that you could ration out for that time. Odds and ends of food in the cupboard or the freezer that you could make use of, or friends and family or church family that could help. But what if you started that 4 weeks with nothing in your bank account? Or what if you started in debt? A lot of people are doing that. You wouldn't have much food in your freezer for long because you wouldn't be able to pay for it. And you wouldn't be able to cook your food because you wouldn't have enough money to pay for the gas or the electricity to cook your food. So you'd be living off the dry food and the long-term, long-life food that you can get from a food bank, which is okay, but it's not nice. It's not nice. What would you do? It's not a hypothetical situation or something that happens somewhere else in the country or in a third world country, but here in Handsworth, in our streets, in these roads. And when you add to all this the factors of mental health, sickness, bereavement, unemployment, you can see why many people and how many people are struggling all around us. The chains of debt lead people to depression. Shackles of addiction lead to long-term mental health issues along with everything else. Shock of bereavement leaves people vulnerable, often depressed and hopeless, and sometimes unable to manage the budget, unable to go to work or to look after themselves. What a difference it would make just to have somewhere safe to come to talk to somebody about it. And that's before you even mention our seniors, many of whom are lonely and vulnerable to depression as well, because they've got no one to go to because government funding has dried up and there are no daytime clubs or centres, nothing to help them. What a difference it makes to have somewhere to come on a Monday, somewhere to be with people, to eat and to find spiritual help and the network of people where you can feel you belong and can keep in touch with. There are things you can do, but take a walk and have a look and ask God what to do. Maybe go with the Monday group, or once a month, Albert, you go, don't you, and walk along Wickery Road and around there and talk to people. Talk to Albert if you want to go out with them. Join a street watch group. The police are supporting street watch groups very heavily at the moment. Our local councillor in this area, Paulette Hamilton, is trying to get different street watch groups going. Maybe once a month you go out with a group of people in yellow vests and go and see what's on the streets, go and see if you can help, go and see if you can deter some of the people who are trading as they shouldn't do. Pray about it. Ask God what you can do. Fasting is a kind of, it's okay, it's good, the right kind of fasting is good. But when we look at this passage, it's saying that fasting they were doing was a self-focused, negative abstinence of stuff. Fasting God desires is focused on other people and is a positive giving of yourself, to spend yourself on their behalf, to pour yourself out on behalf of the hungry, and it costs, just as it cost Jesus his life, but your cost is their gain. The Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve, to give his life as a ransom. We're told to, in humility, value others above ourselves, not looking to our own interests, Philippians chapter 2, but to the interests of others. To be just like Jesus, to have his mindset, who being in the very nature God, didn't consider equality with him something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Think about our streets. I'm just going to try and move on a bit to the final slide. Then God says, you'll be a beacon. Then you'll be a beacon. When you turn away from an internal focus and you look at the people in need of the gospel, in need of sustenance, in need of freedom, what happens? Well, your prayer life will be transformed. Do you want that? I want that. God will listen. He says, I'll hear you. And I'll say, here I am. Here I am. I will listen. You'll know his presence. He'll be with you, before you and behind you. You'll be like bright stars in the darkness, bright lights in the darkness. Your light will blaze like the sunshine in the day. He will guide you continually. He'll be there like he guided the Israelites in the desert. And when you're in those desert times, the difficult times, he will refresh you. God will strengthen you when you are weak, and refresh you continually so that you will be a reliable source of life like a stream in the desert. That's what he wants us to be. That's the promise, isn't it? That's the promise that connects us really with the Old and New Testament. This is what God has made his people to be. So that what will happen? You will become rebuilders, repairers, restorers of lives and communities. That's our vision, isn't it? Restoring lives, rebuilding the community. But it starts with a change of heart and a desire to pursue God's heart and what he wants for people. This is really important for us, isn't it? We can't pray for people to be released from poverty and then refuse to take practical steps to actually help them to get out of it. We can't come to God and pray for people to know Jesus and take no action to tell them about it. Tell them about him. We can't say we're a loving people by telling them about Jesus and then refuse to love them by lifting a finger to help them rebuild their life. And people they owe money to, or in bondage to, or so depressed that they can't get out of it and do anything about it. God calls us to do those things and to break the very systems that hold people captive to those things. But that's what we need to pray for. That's where we need to move. The Father's heart is to see people restored to the image they were made in. So you can see why he's so blunt. Our new community that is here, our community that's made of people who are born-again believers, who are saved, can't just be about prayer, worship, fasting, Bible study, Bible knowledge, and great sounding religious speak. It has to be matched with the action that flows from that. As we keep saying, we serve and we do not in order to be saved, but we are saved in order that we serve and do the things that are after God's heart. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but have not love, what am I? Clashing cymbal and clanging gong. Just a noise. That's all you are. That's all it is. It's just a veneer. There's no substance underneath it. We all need to be challenged by this trumpet call, this shout. We can't claim to be the people of God if we say the right words up front, sing the right songs, but behind the scenes we gossip about each other and people in our community rather than helping each other to overcome our problems and our difficulties. And we can't demonstrate love within the church if we refuse to forgive when we're hurt, if we refuse to love when others don't love us, then we can't really be the people of God in the community outside of the church, and the church just becomes a painful noise in God's ears. We need to be moved with his compassion for the people all around us who are going through hell and going to hell. And just make an attempt. Just make one step, even if it's just to go and walk and see what's going on. Just to see and ask God, what can I do? You know, this is really very at the heart of the vision for us to be a centre, a place where people can come for life. But it does mean that we go out as well. Will you do that? Are you willing to go and go on a walk sometime this week? Take someone else with you. Challenge someone else in church or in your family to go and walk with you and open your eyes and see what's on the streets. Or do something like that that will show you what's happening. And then pray and ask the Lord, what can you do? What can I do? Is there someone in your family that God has put in your mind as we've spoken this morning? You know you need to go and talk to. You know you need to help in some way. You know you need to listen to or to give something to because they're in need. Or to be reconciled with them because you're not on speaking terms. But you know you should. Is there someone in the church that's like that? Is there someone in the church you can help who is actually in need? But you walk past them every time we see them because we can't quite see what it is that they need. Ask God. Take action. Listen to the trumpet call this week. Father, we thank you for your word again. Recognize that your word is painful, that your word is difficult, that you don't just call us to come on a Sunday to do the right things here, but your heart is for a broken world outside of these doors. And you don't always show us precisely what we should do, but you send us and you say, go. You say, go and show my love. Go and make disciples. Go and feed the hungry. Go and clothe the naked. Go and find a home for someone. That's not easy, Lord. Will you help us? Please help us. We want to do the right thing. We want to do the best thing. We want to be pursuing your love. And we want to shine with that light to be a beacon here in this place, Father. So continue to challenge us and unsettle us until we go. Until we take your gospel. Until we take your good news to those who really need it. Until we become good news for people in our community. We don't want to be a backwater church. We don't want to be an irrelevant church. We don't want to be a body of people that's simply religious, has no impact. We want to impact your world, Lord. We want to restore and rebuild and renew and see lives changed and our community changed. But we confess that we are often not like that. And we do get tied up, Lord. We confess that today together. We get tied up in our own affairs. We get tied up in our church affairs. We get tied up with what we do for worship. And then we don't have time left for what's on your heart. Help us on this journey. We know you will. We know you're calling us on this journey. So we have confidence that you will do great things. Thank you. Thank you. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Amen.